the other day I may have possibly had the greatest idea for a build I've ever had in my entire existence. What if we had this melee that can freeze instantly, but a lot of them? Now that I think about it, like most of my build ideas are this. But for some reason, this one is oddly backed as well, because for some reason, Stasis is really like towards your melees. And I think it's mainly to do with Glacial Harvest, or Stasis Shards more specifically. Glacial Harvest will give you Stasis Shards when you freeze an enemy. Then picking up those Stasis Shards will just give you flat out melee energy. If you combine that with Whisper of Hunger, which will increase that melee energy, you'll get probably around like 15 to 20% of your melee back per shard. Now, obviously, on its own, that's very good, but it becomes even better once you realize that freezing a yellow bar or above will actually grant you 3 Stasis Shards, which will effectively give you like half of your melee back for just using it in the first place. And for free as well. You've done nothing to do this. We literally just frozen a target. And then furthermore, it gets even better, because if you combine it with Iceflare bolts, which sends out a Seeker when you shed at a target, you can essentially freeze more targets, meaning you can generate more shards, meaning you can get more melee energy back. Which does, yes, technically mean you can just use your melee and instantly get it back for free, just like that, nothing else needed. But of course, that is kind of rare and relies on a lot of variables, the main one being having a lot of enemies to freeze, which of course isn't going to happen a lot. However, fortunately enough, we've literally only used 2 aspects and a fragment out of everything we can do in this build, so we have a lot of room to improve that error. And the first improvement I would suggest is by using Whisper of Fractures. Whisper of Fractures will grant you increased melee recharge rate when 2 or more enemies are nearby, and the recharge rate, to be honest, is actually kind of significant. However, of course, it's a bit unreliable because it relies on multiple targets, and it's only recharge rate, and it's not that fast, so it's not perfect, but it's still there. However, in quite deep contrast to Whisper of Fractures, Heavy-Handed is a lot more stronger, specifically Elemental Shards, Elemental Charge, and Heavy-Handed. Elemental Shards will allow one of your Stasis Shards to count as an Elemental well. Then, because of Elemental Charge, when you pick it up, you're going to get charged with Light, which will allow you to proc Heavy-Handed. Heavy-Handed will flat out just give you half of your melee as long as you're charged with light, consuming a stack of charged with light. And then, of course, if you combine this half of your melee for basically free with the half of your melee for basically free, you get 100% of your melee for basically free, which is, as you could probably guess, exceptionally good. Pair that with Supercharged as well, meaning you can get more stacks of charged with light, and you'll essentially never run out of stacks with charged with light, meaning you can constantly proc Heavy-Handed and constantly proc Glacial Harvest, constantly giving back your melee. However though, there is one downside. While it does seem great and all that you can get back half of your melee very easily, just like all things, it may not happen all the time, which is where probably the biggest part and smallest part of this build comes in. Claws of Akamara. I've actually never used these gauntlets before, but what they do is they give you another melee charge, which is exceptionally good for this build in multiple ways. Of course, one more melee charge is, you know, another melee charge, which is obviously very good for a melee build. However, the more important thing is the second melee charge itself. You see, when you use this build, you have the potential to go over 100% melee energy and get even more than that. But with only a single melee charge, that over 100% doesn't go anywhere. But using Claw of Akamara, because you have 2 charges of your melee, that overkill can go into the second charge of your melee, which will eventually allow you to get back that melee, allowing you to have 2 melees. And that cycle constantly repeats itself as well, giving you genuine constant melees, which is, I'm not gonna lie, really kind of good, especially because this is Stasis and you're freezing targets. But yeah, unfortunately though, this is kind of how far we can go with the build. I would recommend checking on a melee well maker, allowing you to generate an elemental well when you get a melee kill, but it's not incredibly important to the build. This is a decently fun and extremely reliable build. Seriously, try and run out of melees with this thing. But yeah, that's about it. Enjoy the gameplay. See ya.
Look, back there.